I already knew the end. I knew the end of the game before I even started. It was an old game at the start, but I loved Far Cry 3 so much I decided to give it a go. I skipped Far Cry 4, simply out of the rumors of it being a clone of 3 and not hearing very great things. So, I started Far Cry 5, not knowing too much about the gameplay, aside from that there was hunting and fishing. Just like Far Cry 3, the infamous opening mission was fine, where you can almost just quit the game at the start if you don't arrest them. But the problem was with the game is that the cutscenes pushed the game along, were so intensely in your face, and just felt like such a slowdown compared to the gameplay and the loot that the frantic running and gunning I experienced from the opening grinded as the NPCs spouted dialogue and let the game just crawl while they expounded whatever they needed. The gameplay. So, the loop is fine in general. It's a Far Cry game. You shoot people, you run around, you reload, you use different skills of being a kind of a hunter type thing to fight them. For the most part, they took a lot of the Far Cry 3 stuff out of being like animalistic. And even then, I didn't use it all that much to begin with like the potions, the way to fight and fight people. But the exploration was fun. Instead of going onto a tower, you have to actually physically go there or fly over it to bring out the checkpoints and fast travel. So, and then that brings us to like the missions at the start of the game. So there's always a slight comedy to Far Cry games. There's a little bit of like nuance to some of the missions that you do and some of the places that you go, and some are kind of funny. And during the first area, there was a lot of that. Like there was a testicle harvesting festival that you did, and that was a lot of fun. And you got to shoot bulls while they were playing healing songs in the background. Because I'm not gonna say the word because you do, but all that stuff was there. Like the comedy was there, but after that, it feels like this. After the first region, comedy gone, and the game kind of devolved. Like the developers that worked on the first part of the game weren't connected or working with the developers working on the second part and the third part of the game in the different regions. So in the end, it almost felt very disjointed in tone. So beyond that, you also have the way that the missions grind to a halt once you meet a certain threshold in each region. So the particular villain will kidnap you randomly. There's no way of escaping this that I found. And then they do a long cutscene where they berate you or yell at you or tell you how much you're terrible and how you're gonna sin and you're gonna be doing all this stuff. And in the end, it's just like, but why? And they try to incorporate different things into that idea of, these people each have their own ways of doing things, but not really. And they all have these like particular things that they do, not really. I mean, there was one arc that was semi-interesting with Faith, who's the second antagonist in the second region, and she talked about how when she was 17, she got addicted to drugs and like all this stuff and what was she supposed to do. And then in the end, you just end her and move along, and there's no actual arc to her character. There's no actual use to it. So it's all very confusing in the long run of the disjointed development of the game, the grinding halt during the missions when you would do stuff, and not to mention like everything was foreshadowed. Every segment of the game was foreshadowed in such a way that I already knew what was going to happen, and it wasn't even that fun. Like I was just like, this isn't that fun. I already know what's happening here. So what's the point? Where do I go from here once I know, oh yeah, that person's going to betray us. Oh, I'm going to be doing that mission and doing this stuff and that. And it's just like, okay, but that doesn't actually like mean anything. The character development was lacking. The way that the characters interacted was lacking. The NPCs that you interacted with, they were allies, were also lacking depth. Like, oh yeah, we care about this area so much, and we've been here for so long, we do all these things, but there was really no depth beyond the surface for these characters, motivation-wise. There was nothing to really grab your teeth onto to really like be able to, become enmeshed in the story. It was so surface level in so many ways that it really did not get me to want to come back to play for the story. I came back because of everything else, the stasher missions that you had to go on where you had to kind of solve a problem or solve a puzzle to figure out where things were stashed in this prepper side missions. The forts, capturing the forts was kind of fun because you had to think about things if you want to be stealthy. You had to take out alarms. You had to see where people were. I think that really brings me to the idea of the guns for hire. So you unlock guns for hire throughout the game. There's 9 like major ones, and then they have 3 slots for like random ones. But I don't understand why you would use the random people when the 9 people that you have are fine. And then also, I could not stand the way that they talked all the time. There was always chatter from the Guns for Hire. There was always something they had to talk about. Oh, and they would interact at some points, and even then it was kind of annoying because the other NPC wouldn't react to the one NPC asking them, "Oh, are you single?" And they wouldn't react. So the depth of their characters was even lacking, and I ended up using the dog and the cougar for most of it because the dog would highlight everyone, and the cougar was silent. No one was talking. No, they weren't shooting. I was the only one shooting. They wouldn't talk. They would make growls or they would bark, and that was fine. And I enjoyed that part of it. I just didn't need to hear about my dusty box needs cleaning by some lady in a helicopter overneath me, or I didn't hear about I'm moving or I'm landing or I'm shooting. I really had no care less for what you were doing, and I was much more involved and focused on completing the task at hand rather than listen to you chitter chatter or tell me something or go on about something. And that kind of leads me to the AI and how like simplistic they were in a way. I really thought that the AI had a good way of handling itself at the very beginning. I flew a helicopter somewhere, I landed the helicopter, I got out of the helicopter, and I was inside a house. I hear enemies arrive. One of the enemies literally got out of their truck, got my helicopter, and took it. And I was like, oh man, these AI are going to be crazy intelligent. Man, I cannot believe how cool these AI are. They weren't. They immediately descended back into like just dumbness after that. Again, I think it's the regional maybe aspect of it because there was some enemies that were more regional. But eventually, once you flush the skill tree out enough, there's no point because you already are so powered up and so locked in and so dialed in that there's no point. The game becomes so insanely easy going from one thing to another once I got my health up. Once I got enough ammo, once I got all of my guns, my shotgun and my sniper rifle, my rocket launcher that could lock onto stuff, I barely did anything else. I didn't need the armor piercing bullets. I think there were some, never explained to me. I didn't need the crossbow because my sniper rifle silenced. I didn't need the knives. I barely used explosives towards the end of the game just because it was more efficiently just to pick them off and rather than throw things at them and then have things explode and alert enemies. It was such a very much like, oh, there's variety, but you don't even need the variety. It kind of goes back to the Skyrim thing where you always have a stealth approacher because there's not enough meat to the game to specialize in a way that makes it meaningful. So now, for one of the last things that I wanted to hit on was the way that the vehicles were hilarious because there was no physics heavily involved. You could fly a plane, but because you were locked into first person, you could fly a plane almost vertical after crashing into a tree. Everything was more or less like you just traversing the landscape rather than having actual physics. Like in GTA games, where the plane, the way it moved was very much weighted, and there was gravity affecting it, and it had weight to it. There's no weight to the planes. There's no weight to the vehicles. There's no weight to anything. And then while driving the vehicle, the free look messed with me because I would turn suddenly while still going in the same direction, but there was no actual steering going on unless I directly steered it, which I guess would be helpful if you wanted to do combat in a vehicle. But for the most part, I found that confusing and rather just annoying. Like it really didn't matter what I did in the end. I got from point A to point B. I got everything done. I did the things that Far Cry wanted me to do, but I don't even think I would replay it. I don't think that I would do 100%. Maybe if I'm really bored, I have nothing else to do, I might go back and flush out the last couple locations I didn't have or the prepper stashes I didn't find. But for the most part, like in the end, the game is so linear and it's an open world in quotation marks, but it's the gameplay and it's so linear because you're immediately launched back into storyline missions without any thought. You're launched back into like these people want you to get the X, Y, and Z done, and in the end, you're like, I'm doing what and why am I doing this? So, in just to sum it all up, I had a lot of fun. I'm not going to say that I didn't, but did I actually think that there was depth to the story? Did I become engaged with the story? No. Did I get kind of annoyed at the story missions eventually, replaying the same one where you're being hypnotized? Yeah, it was kind of annoying. And I really didn't exactly enjoy that one because I already could know what was happening. Like, it wasn't that. The foreshadowing was so heavy that it wasn't foreshadowing. It was, you're going to do it and there's nothing you can do about it. You don't have control over it. So there was no actual consequence to anything I did. And maybe that's what bothers the most, is the lack of consequence, because everything was already predetermined for me. There was no choices in the game, except for maybe not starting the game at the very beginning. So in the end, I'm going to wrap this video up here. And then we're going to move on to I'm probably going to do Mass Effect Andromeda, which I know very little about, except from the memes and people saying it's bad, but I want to try it. I'm going into it completely blind, gameplay wise, storyline wise, except for like I know something about, like, genocide, but that's about it. So I'll see you in the next